The Meg patch of Grand Blue Fantasy vs. Rising is here, and it's a really, really small patch. A lot of people, at least that I've seen on social media, have been clamoring for nerfs to characters like Matera, the usual clamoring for changes to 6XL and Brave Counter. No system mechanics were changed. Matera was left unnerfed, as well as some very other strong characters like Percival and Catalina. Instead, only 4 characters in this patch were adjusted at all. So it seems like Cygames or Arc System Works wants to keep things a little bit more on the conservative end, as we are still in the middle of a competitive season for the ArcSys World Tour. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the patch notes themselves by looking at Vaseraga. Vasaraga's Far M has been nerfed in terms of its recovery. Previously, it was -4 on block, so safe, and it was -31 on whiff. The recovery has been increased by 3 frames, so now on block, it's technically unsafe at -7, but at the ranges that he's going to be attacking with this normal, it's pretty much still safe on block due to spacing. But on whiff, it's now 3 frames slower, so it's -34. The idea behind this is to make it a little more easier for the opponent to try and whiff punish. So hopefully that's the case going forward. Vasaraga's Soul Forge mechanic was buffed in some previous patches, and it seems like it was a little bit too strong before, and I don't disagree with that. Previously, if you were to reapply Soul Forge after you used and activated it with an armored attack, then Vasaraga would be able to regenerate Soul Forge and be able to stop it from depleting. So once you have this applied, Vaseraga, if he got the hit, if he got the knockdown, was able to snowball, basically was always able to keep his armored options available to him. This was really strong because basically once Vaseraga had the opening, unless he completely lost the turn or an interaction was put on defense, which was a very strong position for him to be in considering his array of reversal options, he could basically keep his Soul Forge and armored properties on his moves for the entire round. Now, if Vaseraga reapplies Soul Forge while the gauge is still active, it will refill, but it will still continue to tick down. This is a pretty big nerf, just the endless armor presence that Vaseraga could have. Now, if he does reapply Soul Forge, he is on a ticking time clock to use his armored moves, meaning that he can't just really just sit there with it and wait until the next interaction or wait until he wants to throw it out. There's a lot more resource management going on for Vaseraga, and I do think that this is a pretty good change. Another pretty big nerf to the move is how it behaves if you're actually able to punish it. Previously, if Vaseraga already had Soul Forge going and he reapplied it and you actually punished him for it, sure, you got the hit, but Soul Forge was still procced. Could be tricky to do depending on the situation, but basically, Vaseraga, if he got Soul Forge off, he had the Soul Forge buff applied to him, making this pretty difficult for you to get counterplay, and it didn't really matter if you were able to get in or punish lazy Vaseraga play. He got Soul Forge regardless of what you were able to do to him. And now if you're actually able to punish him going for Soul Forge reapplications, you completely take away Soul Forge by setting the gauge to 0. This is pretty big. Now, if Vaseraga is sloppy with his Soul Forge applications, or he tries to get one of these out in neutral and you say hit him with a fireball, you take away Soul Forge from him, resetting him back to his non-Soul Forge state. I think this is a really good change that rewards good play by being able to poke against Vaseraga and punish him for going for Soul Forges, while also punishing sloppy Vaseraga play, where they can't just go, all right, Soul Forge, I'm armored now, deal with it. It is worth noting, though, that this only applies if Vaseraga already has Soul Forge active. If he's activating it for the first time and applying the buff, and you punish him, he still keeps Soul Forge. So it kind of just stops him from endlessly looping it, as it were. Vaseraga's Ultimate Fireball, Ultimate Extinction, also has a couple of nerfs to it, namely to the pushback on block with proximity to the opponent, as well as block stun. Point blank range, you were plus 24. And of course, the farther out you were, the frame advantage would increase a little bit. So right here, you could be plus 27, you could be plus 31, for instance. And basically, at some of these far ranges, you got a safe Soul Forge application off of this fireball, and there really wasn't much the opponent could do about it. It's also worth noting that this is a really good pressure tool, or at least it was for Vaseraga, since at point blank range, the opponent was left right next to him. So he's able to basically enforce his turn again. You could even do other things off of this as well, like go for frame traps or tick throw. So, for investing a little bit of meter, Vaseraga was able to take the turn. Not only that, he could also sneak in a cheeky Soul Forge activation here. At point blank rage, the opponent would block it, but that would basically open up Vaseraga to a 6-frame normal punish, which maybe he could get away with, and maybe a good player would consistently punish it. But if you did this in block strings, it was a little greedier there at the very least, where you'd be like -17. This probably has some different applications if you already were in right? Like, having a little bit of armor there, the opponent's thinking about all the other pressure and things like that. You could theoretically sneak away with this a little more often than not. Definitely at farther ranges, though, where you be like -12, for example, off of a situation where you're Gatling into or canceling into Instinction from far heavy or close heavy, then, the opponent basically didn't really get too many opportunities to punish. And again, because you're threatening so many other things because you're plus in this situation, it could be hard for an opponent to find that gap. Now, the changes to the block stun and to the pushback on proximity basically gut this move as a pressure reset option for Vaseraga. Now, if you do this point blank next to the opponent, you're plus 18, which is still pretty good, but more importantly, the opponent gets pushed way far back. So now, instead of being able to threaten a triple strike a sequence, you're poking out with your far M or your far heavy instead. In the corner, it's worth noting that pushback doesn't really exist. So pretty much it's the same situation in the corner for Vaseraga, but his mid-screen pressure is certainly worse. In addition to that, because of the pushback, now you'll never get a Soul Forge to be blocked by the opponent as well. So activating this basically means that in the mid screen anyway, you're in a -22 situation, and this is pretty easy for the opponent to punish. Now again, you are still plus, so you are threatening some other things, but the gimmick is a little weaker here in this particular case, and I can't quite remember any sort of pressure or setups that would work where you basically got a guaranteed safe Soul Forge before, but pretty much any sort of sequence like that is now gone thanks to the block stun nerfs from this ultimate special move. So Vaseraga can't just throw out ultimate extinction and then get a free Soul Forge off. A wary opponent, is going to be on the lookout for that and trying to punish you. Now, this is a nerf that most of the community is aware about thanks to developer match footage, and it comes to heavy battalions of fear, where previously on Whiff, Vaseraga would always do the follow-up attack. This basically made it a full-screen lariat option for Vaseraga to try and close the gap, and armored one too once he had Soul Forge applied. And now the second hit of Battalions of Fear Heavy no longer comes out if Vaseraga whiffs, meaning that this is no longer a full-screen neutral approach or skip option. Vaseraga has to get a little closer in order for this to actually work, and if the opponent jumps it or anything like that, he doesn't have a second active hitbox out for the opponent to have to worry about. So it's a pretty fair nerf, I would say, to Vaseraga. He's supposed to be a little bit bad at full screen and not really have a option like this. So I think it does make a little bit of sense, but it's yet another nerf that is tallied up against him this patch. The ultimate version of Battalions of Fear also has a change to it. The pushback on the second hit has been reduced. Sometimes it can be a little tricky to combo into this crouching medium. Now, because of the reduced pushback on hit, this combo is a little more consistent, especially when you're doing it from the corner position, which matters since this is one of Vaseraga's defensive tools. At least that's what Blue Sky Guy reports as far as the move goes. I don't know if this changes any other interactions or situations for Vaseraga. A combo consistency buff is nice. The cooldown for the light and medium version of his Savage Rampage have also been nerfed. Previously, they were only 20 frames, basically meaning they had no cooldown. Now, both of those cooldowns have been increased to 80 frames, or about a second and a third. So this means that Vaseraga has a little bit of downtime before he can just freely re-enter stance again, which does matter since once he has Soul Forge armed, this becomes armored options. I actually had some footage recorded earlier discussing that I didn't quite know what the change to his Heavy Savage Rampage did, but actually Twitter was there to save the day just by happenstance here, as Vaseraga had some combo routes before where you needed a micro walk in order to combo into his heavy savage rampage, but now you just get it for free. So before, this needed a micro walk, and now it just works, which honestly, I kind of like the fact that they removed a bit of that barrier to execution. It just, means that the character is a little more stable and a little less finicky to play. So that's the buff for the Heavy Savage Rampage for Vaseraga. That's the Vaseraga changes, and honestly, I do think these are pretty smart nerfs. They don't fundamentally change his game plan, but they don't make it as strong as it was before. The fact that he was able to constantly just reapply Soulforge, use it in a proc and then just say, nope, I'm going to reactivate it, have it ticking forever, waiting to tick down, that is, and basically wait until the next interaction before I proc my armor again was a little much. Like, he was basically always armored once he was able to apply Soulforge. Now there's actually going to be some downtime where he doesn't have that form again. It sort of combines the state that he was before Soulforge was a gauge mechanic where he could use it several times within its duration, and applying sort of that downtime window that he had when it was just that one stock single use case for him. So I kind of like that change. His full screen game is a little bit worse. His pressure in the mid screen anyway with Ultimate Extinction is also a little bit worse. There's just some more exploitable gaps in terms of his offense and whatnot, and I do think that's fair because he's still Vaseraga. He still has applications of armor. He's still going to be really strong when he gets Soulforge applied, but there's going to be some times where he needs to play around the fact that he doesn't have it again and reapply it. And honestly, it's probably better for him to let it run out and then reapply it so that he has the full locked gauge instead of just continually extending the life cycle of Soulforge. I think these are some pretty fair nerfs to him, but the fact that he's the only character in this patch that's really seeing any sort of substantial nerfs might be a little bit crazy to a lot of people, including me. Now that we're done with Vaseraga, let's move on to Zooey. Since this is a very small patch, I'm just going to do all the characters in one video because why make you click around like that? Anyways, Zooey has a lot of buffs, starting off with Summon Dragon, Immortal Thrust. Previously, this move did 800 damage and left the opponent grounded. And now, she actually launches the opponent with this attack. It also does 200 more damage, 1,000 now, up from 800. In a vacuum, it doesn't really seem like it's going to do much to improve her overall combo game. None of her close normals link in the corner anyway, but I imagine that if she does follow-ups with the dragon's attacks, then she might be getting something. However, if you do get a counter hit near the corner, you do get a link. Now, in a more match practical sort of situation regarding this buff to Immortal Thrust, you can actually get some pretty decent conversions if you're pressing against Zooey at these corner positions here, courtesy of Irin. A full combo leading into super. Consider before that basically Zooey just got a little bit of damage. It's actually kind of scary to poke against her if she wants to set up the dragon on you now. The big thing here for Zooey is the fact that she's getting a little more damage if she successfully pokes you with this attack, as well as getting a knockdown off of it, meaning that she can do other follow-ups and get some Oki. So it's kind of nice just to improve her overall neutral game plan with this attack. Summon Dragon Heavy Breath also has a couple of buffs, namely to its behavior on block. Previously, the chip damage was 240, and you had about 6 frames of advantage afterwards. Now the chip damage is more than doubled, up to 500. A pretty substantial chunk, as you can tell on the health bar up there. Not only that, but the advantage on block has been increased by 6 frames, so now Zooey's plus 12. I don't think this is really going to open up anything really new for her, but it should be a big buff for a situation in neutral where perhaps she has a little more control over the opponent and might be able to get out another Summon Dragon option out earlier than before. Her Summon Dragon Sweeping Beam also has a buff to its overall damage. Previously, at close ranges, the overall damage for the attack would be 1,400. Meanwhile, if you were at a farther range, you would get 2,000 damage. Now, at close range, Sweeping Beam does 400 more damage, so a total of 1,800. Meanwhile, at farther ranges, it's going to do about 500 more damage. 2,500 up from 2,000. Obviously, your results may vary based on which hits that you actually get out of this move, and there's a lot more complicated math happening to each additional hit, but I wanted to summarize the overall package changes more than trying to spend time breaking all that down. Zooey's ultimate fireball, Peacemaker's Wings, also has a pretty nice buff to it. The vertical hitbox has been expanded. Previously, the opponent could jump over this with a high jump. Meaning that, in some neutral situations, you could be caught out pretty handedly. With the expanded vertical hitbox, it's actually a little harder to jump over this attack now. So, depending on the height and whatnot, the opponent might not be able to successfully escape this. Not only that, but it also means that if the opponent is high up in a combo, Zooey should more reliably be able to connect with this ultimate fireball. The light and medium version of Thunder has a buff to its hit stun. So previously you had about 3 frames of hit stun to it. So if you got to move like this, Grant could get caught, and you'd be +7 if you use this here, which basically meant that you didn't really get a whole lot, right? Like your normals that would reach would be quite out of range in this situation. And in combos as well, you didn't really get a whole lot of opportunity to work with them before. And to me, it seems like the idea for Thunder is to improve it in terms of like using it in a block string or using it in neutral a bit. Because now, if you do this, instead of being +7, you're +17 here. So if you do this at particular ranges, you actually get a link off of it. It does feel a little finicky to me, but you can actually get some confirms from using the light version of Thunder in neutral. Of course, I think the biggest application for this change to Thunder has to be in its Okizeme application, since previously, with the very low amount of hit stun, it could be hard for Zooey to react and confirm. You can see that in a combo there. You can do it with the light, of course, but not your heavy, so you basically had to rely on getting some faster normals in order to combo off of this. Compare that to now, where you actually have enough time to react and confirm into a heavy, which can dramatically increase your damage wherever you're using negative edge Thunder, whether it's in your combo routing or in your set play. So it's actually kind of a nice buff, something that I kind of underappreciated until I, had to look up and actually remember that Zooey had this function to Thunder. So a pretty nice change. That should mean that her set play is a little dangerous, and any sort of combo routing that she uses the negative edge follow-up of Thunder in probably is a little bit more stable and allows for some new links. The medium version of Aerial Spinning Slash has a couple of buffs to it. Previously, you could air block this move, so it didn't really have too much utility as an anti-air. In addition to that, converting off of it could be a little tricky, since, if you did catch the opponent with it, they would be pushed back and you really didn't get any sort of follow-ups to it. The move has effectively been changed to now become an anti-air, as it is no longer air blockable. So it gives Zooey like a very high jump anti-air option for her to use in some situations. In addition to that, on a counter hit, you actually get a full combo. So if you successfully anti-air an aggressive opponent, Zooey actually gets some rewards off of this attack now. So this is something nice to help out her neutral a little bit, to help her deal with some of these far range situations. There's also a couple other changes to it, like they're trying to make sure that all of the hits in it do connect in order to maximize the damage. And the total number of hits has been changed from 5 to 6. It's supposed to create a difference in frame advantage between characters of differing heights. So just some stability applications to it across the board, giving Zooey a new tool in her arsenal. Now let's discuss the changes to Heavy Aerial Spinning Slash, because this move is effectively reworked as well. Previously, this was a skip neutral option for Zooey, where she could jump across the screen, get some iframes to ignore projectiles, and then be +2 in the opponent's face. And if she was successful with hitting it, then she got a combo. Depending on your ranges, you would get a far light or a close light. Now, with all that being said, this could be an anti-air option as well, since it was air unblockable, but your reward was pretty minuscule, as you didn't really get any links off of it. It's like, congrats, you anti-aired. And I guess like that was a little bit too weak for Zooey. She does have a pretty decent 2H, but against some other projectiles, like jump-in projectiles, or perhaps like just some higher jump-ins, maybe she had a little bit of difficulty sort of reaching for this. Not only that, but in terms of combo routing, this move didn't really have a lot of utility there. So her mid-screen routes sort of suffered just because there really wasn't too many moves that she could rely on in order for her to extend her combos in mid-screen. Now let's look at how the move behaves in the current version of the game. It still tracks plenty far. You're still able to get a combo on grounded hit with it as well. But a big difference here is that it's actually now -2 on block. So this is a little bit scarier to use as an approach tool. The main things that they're buffing about it, however, are to its aerial hit properties, which actually give you follow-ups on hit now. So now, if you anti-air with this move, Zooey's able to extend her combos, and not only that, you get that same ground bounce after it as well up close. So now this sort of has become a combo tool for Zooey. So instead of having its application being more of a skip neutral tool, it's better as an anti-air, and it's actually something that Zooey can use in mid-screen or even in the corner to extend her combo game, which I think the character really needed. Her mid-screen routes were a little finicky and cooldown reliant or even meter reliant, but now she has a lot of other options that she can use. And now for some examples of how Zooey can use these reworked spins in her combo routing, we can take a look at some Twitter clips here. So with triple strikes, you can go coast to coast, and even using the medium version as an anti-air, you can still use the heavy in your combo routing to once again go coast to coast. So whenever Zooey effectively hits you, if she's got enough meter to do an ultimate technique in there, she's taking you to the corner, which is a pretty nice buff for the character, just giving her more combo routing options now. All of this, by the way, courtesy of Juturna or at CS_OLG on Twitter. Lastly, Zooey's Armageddon Super Skybound art has a nice buff to it. Since the move up close will swap sides with Zooey in the corner, this could be pretty disadvantageous for Zooey to go for in situations where she wasn't going to get the kill. You can still safe jump here, absolutely, but the opponent basically got a free cornering onto Zooey when she was trying to run more of her offense, at least in these particular situations. And now the opponent is actually dragged a little closer to Zooey so that she's able to jump and get a cross-up on them, thus retaking her corner position. So this is sort of just like a nice quality of life buff for Zooey, although the fact that she now has a cross-up might mean that people can experiment and try to find some same-side setups or things like that, potentially. I'm not entirely sure, but you give someone Okizemi, they'll find something to do with it. At the surface level, though, nice quality of life buff for Zooey. We'll see if anything more substantial comes out of it. That's pretty much it for Zooey in this patch. A lot of really nice buffs for the character. While she does lose her plus unblock neutral skip too, I think that she's more than happy to trade up for having just a better combo game overall, as she tends to suffer when she doesn't have her Summon Dragon out already in a lot of these instances. And she's had a lot of things going for her, like a bit of some Oki and some set play, but some of the threats and rewards for setting it up just weren't all there. But now, if you press against Summon Dragon, then she gets a full combo off of it. In some situations, she has more damage and more chip with her other Summon Dragon attacks. She's actually able to use Thunder in a bit of set play and get higher rewards for it, or perhaps have new combos for it. And she has some other anti-air options that lead to meaningful rewards, meaning that it's a little scarier to try and jump against her. Moving on to Yuel, let's get into her first set of changes to some of her normals. Her farm medium's pushback on the first hit has been reduced. Now, I'm not sure if there were situations where this might not have been able to combo into its second hit before, or if you did like a cancel or something, it wouldn't link properly. But ultimately, what this should mean is that Yuel is left a little closer. As you can see here, we are quite far away outside of light range after connecting with a far medium. Here's what things look like in the current patch. We are substantially closer, in fact, close enough. Not quite for some light normals to reach, depending on the range, but definitely closer overall. This should be a nice little bit of improvement for Yuel's potential combo game in some circumstances, or her pressure. If you have a specific example of where this benefits the character, do let us know in the comments. Previously, Yuel's 2M was a 7-frame startup attack that was coded with medium level priority. So it wasn't really too gifted because of just, for a 7-frame normal, it was okay, to say the least. And as you would expect, it clashed with other mediums. And now the normal is 6-frame startup. So you have to consider that this is as fast as some of the Farlight jabs in the game. To offset that sort of strength for the character, it did lose some of its clash priority. So now it won't clash against other mediums, but I think this is more than a fair trade-off for Yuel. As when you look at her kit, right, like she's got her 5-frame jabs, this is as fast as her 6M now, and she had a 9-frame 5M. I mean, this is as slow as some other medium normals out there in the game. Compare that to like Gran, who has 7-frame mediums pretty much across the board in terms of his far medium ranges. And, like Yuel needed like a little bit of help, and so this could actually be quite a good poke, and it might open up some new combo routing. An example of proving her combo routes that the patch notes themselves gives is that you can now combo into her crouching medium from 6XL. Little tricky to time, but this should increase her overall damage, the patch notes say. Previously, if you got a counter hit with Yuel's stance crouching light, in order to pick up a combo from it, the optimal thing to do was to cancel out of your stance and go into close heavy. This would be for a corner situation. And even then, it could be a little bit tricky. So to make some easier confirms off of this, they decided to give crouching light and stance a new cancel. Now you can cancel into her stance down heavy in the second half of her third dance's crouching light. So because of this now, confirm should be a lot easier for you all to pick up in this situation. It naturally cancels you out of stance. It gives you a little higher bounce to work with as well. And I imagine that this could be a nice quality of life feature, especially if you're having a hard time executing the third dance cancel into close standing heavy with Yuel before. Previously, Yuel could have a difficult time getting through the opponent's zoning due to her lack of rushdown options in order to deal with it. She had iframes on Hanarashi, her backflip, if you will, but there wasn't really any projectile immunity when it came to using this move. So while you could get through them at times, like you would still pretty much be caught out. This wasn't a real reliable option for Yuel to get through any sort of zoning. Now, the light, medium, and heavy version of Hanarashi all have projectile invincibility from frame 16 to 30. Meaning that you can pretty much react to the opponent throwing a fireball and avoid them, allowing you to close the gap. Though, specific ranges and versions is definitely something you're going to have to become more aware of and used to. But the fact that Yuel actually has decent anti-zoning options in her kit now is huge. She's a rushdown character who really didn't have a good way besides just going for crossovers through projectiles in order to get in. Now she has an aggressive way to try and approach the opponent and their zoning. It's pretty good. The light, medium, and heavy version of Fox Flames all have different buffs, so we're going to take a look at each of them individually, starting with the light version. Previously, its startup was 21 frames, which meant that Yuel had a difficult time comboing into this. In fact, off of a triple strike sequence, she couldn't combo into this. Her only real combo was off a close heavy. The startup has been reduced by 2 frames, so it's now down to 19. This means she can actually combo into Foxfire from her triple strike sequence. This means that if she gets a confirm, she can go into this and do pressure resets on you with a +4 frame advantage. That's really good. Medium Foxfire has some new applications on Oki. Previously, if you knock the opponent down with 2U and immediately went into Foxfire, the attack would whiff. Meaning that you basically had to delay the timing on it in order to get the hit. And from there, the opponent could see this and pretty much DP it on reaction. So outside of that particular sort of application for it, Medium Foxfire was basically used as a block string reset pressure tool for no cooldown. To buff Medium Fox Flame, the active frames have been increased by 7, bringing the total active frames up to 16, while the recovery was reduced to make sure that Yuel still maintains all the same frame advantage. With these changes, it basically means that Yuel is able to use Medium Fox Flame as a meaty. You can be as high as +18 off of this example as well, just giving Yuel a whole new option. And before you think, well, I would just DP it, she's actually able to safely block a heavy 11-frame startup DP while going for this option. So her Okizemi is pretty greatly improved because of this. One thing to mention, though, is that if you have a faster ultimate DP, then you might get into a little trouble. Since, as you can see, an 8-frame DP will punish this here. So, basically, Yuel has an option to go when the opponent doesn't have any meter, and the opponent has a choice whether or not to invest their meter into punishing this new meaty if they have the opportunity to. Lastly, the heavy version of Fox Flame has its startup reduced by a single frame. Previously, it was 23-frame startup, meaning that you basically couldn't combo into it under any circumstance on grounded hits. Unless it was a counter hit, of course. The single frame of difference means that Yuel no longer needs a counter hit in order to combo into heavy Fox Flame. Instead, she can just do close heavy and always combo into it. This is a nice quality of life buff for her, just making sure that even if she's able to catch the opponent jumping instead of mashing with a frame trap, then she still is able to combo into this option. It's a small change, but I think it matters a little bit. People pretty much picked up on the Yuel buffs when they saw developer match footage of Meg as well, and I mean, you know what? Yuel was a pretty weak character in the previous patch, and now she's definitely a lot better. She's not as finicky with some of her confirms, her neutral has been greatly improved as well, so I'm kind of excited to see what Gucci Blunt Wrap is going to be able to do with the character. She definitely needed some help, and I think she got exactly the help that she needed. Maybe there's a few other things that the character's missing, but it's a promising start, and I'm glad to see that a character who's been underperforming in a lot of people's eyes has gotten some love this patch. Lastly, we get into Anila, and the first change is one that's a little harder for me to demonstrate since I don't really know Anila combo routes and where this would have come up, but her double attack, the second attack in her auto combo sequence, has its vertical hitbox expanded upwards so to make sure that people don't fall out of the combo as much. Not sure when that necessarily would have happened, but I'm going to note it here. Anila mains can let us know in the comments below. Her far heavy also has a buff. Previously, it was -12 on block. -38 on whiff. Pretty high whiff recovery. The recovery has been reduced by 3 frames, so now on block, it's -9, and on whiff, it's -35. Anila will appreciate being a little bit safer for poking with this move. In a really weird change, the vertical hitbox of her crouching heavy has been expanded, which is bizarre because it already had a pretty good range to it. Like, yeah, I wouldn't be able to hit super jump height, but pretty damn close to it. Compare that to now. Pretty easy to anti-air at that height now. It's a very weird change for Anila, but I mean, I guess she got it. Ramification has a little bit of a rework in terms of its role in her kit. Previously, this was a pressure tool kit that she could use to get some extra chip damage onto the opponent from pretty much any of her heavy blocks than normals, like close heavy or the triple strike. The thing was, if you did the follow-up, though, there was always a gap the opponent could DP. So basically, the opponent could count the hits, wait for you to go for the third and final hit, and then mash DP to blow up your early cancel into that one. Not that I think he would do it too often, but it wasn't really quite all there, I think. The startup of the first attack of Ramification has been increased from 15 frames to 19 frames, so now you can no longer true string into it. So, with that in mind, though, you have to also consider that they reduced the follow-up startup by about the same number of frames. I think it's down from 15 to 11. So this means that if Anila does make you block Ramification, her follow-up is a true string. So if she's able to actually get this out on you, then she's rewarded with like guaranteed safe wave ending her pressure and adding on a little bit of extra chip damage. But the more important thing to note here is how it behaves on hit. Previously, if you were able to get a hit on the opponent before, this was basically your combo ender for Anila. Since you didn't really have the opportunity to follow up at all after this attack. Now you actually are able to combo after you launch the opponent with a follow-up attack, and you can still combo into this as well from her triple strike sequence. This is pretty nice. Anila always has a guaranteed cooldown-less launcher in her kit now, which, considering that some of her moves are a little tricky to use in combos, she greatly appreciates. To offset this buff, the combo limit is increased a little bit more if you do use Ramification. It will raise the combo limit by 3 instead of by 2, so it is a little trickier to sort of fit in there, but it's a really good combo launcher, and it's certainly something that you can use to finish up a combo or extend. Previously, Anila's Heavy Fireball, Fluff 'em and Stuff 'em, had a total frame count of 51, meaning that this was a pretty slow to recover fireball. After she launched it, she was basically committed for nearly a full second to staying on the ground. The recovery has been decreased by 4 frames, meaning that the total move now takes 47 frames to throw. This can effectively be the difference between Anila eating a jump and punish on a fireball or being able to block it. It's a pretty nice little change. They made adjustments to the behavior on hit to make sure that she doesn't have any new frame advantage or anything like that. This is specifically just a neutral buff. The travel speed of Flock to the Future's light version has been increased. Previously, a round start position would take 21 frames to hit. And if we take a look at it from full screen, well, we get about here after frame 44. Now let's look at the situation with the new buff to it. And now hits at frame 20 at round start, so it's a frame faster there. At a full screen situation, we get just a little bit closer to the opponent. The travel speed is just nice because it basically means that Anila is going to be faster and probably be able to hit the opponent more often with this move. Medium Flock to the Future also has a similar set of buffs to it. Previously, the startup was 30 frames startup, and you had to wait till about frame 38 in order to do the follow-up and beyond to launch the sheep. This is just a pretty slow and awkward to move. You can see, you couldn't really combo into it. And from full screen, you were just shy of hitting the opponent. Taking nearly a full second to get there, too. Medium Flock to the Future startup has been decreased by 4 frames, so now it starts up at frame 26 instead of frame 30, and you can do the follow-up faster as well, at frame 34 instead of frame 38. The move of travel speed has also been dramatically increased. You actually hit the opponent at frame about 62, maybe even like 46 if I'm reading everything right. Yeah, frame 46, so this move actually just goes full screen and runs the opponent down. This move actually feels pretty good to use now. Still a little hard to fit in combos. But as a neutral tool, it's certainly a lot more viable, especially when you consider the fact that you can always just jump off the sheep. Pretty good buff. The medium version of Over the Fence also has a couple of buffs to it as well. Previously, she would start her movement at about frame 10. However, it was pretty stubby before she actually got to do anything. And if she jumped over the opponent, she could clear quite a bit of distance. Now, while it does take about 4 more frames for her to actually start her movement, she does get rewarded with having more distance traveled as well as higher move speed. As you can see, she can just jump over the opponent from full screen now. And if she jumps over the opponent, then a little bit of a break is applied, meaning that Anila should always line up in the same spot. It's a consistent cross-up. This is a nice little buff for Anila, just guaranteeing that there's a similar outcome in spacing if she uses it at close range. And then also, you know, she's at full screen. She can just say, I'm in. Thanks for throwing a fireball, guy. That's really nice of you, guy. The ultimate version of Over the Fence was a move that you rarely see Anila players use, and that's because it really lacked a purpose within the context of her kit. Starting off with it, it looks like it would be a really good throw bait. After all, you jump into the air and you're over the opponent. The problem, though, is the fact that Granblue allows you to take a throw by mashing a button. So if you're crouching and you press a crouching light normal, usually you'd be able to recover just in time to actually block this mix-up. So there really wasn't a use for this move. Sure, you could punish a proper throw tech, but the opponent would just do this crouching light mash and pretty much be safe, and you would just spend bar for a little bit of chip damage. The reward on hit wasn't the greatest either, as you got about 1,800 points of damage for it, which was okay, but not worth the investment of, you know, the bar that you just dropped for it. Not for a combo starter, anyway. The startup has been reduced by 5 frames, going down to frame 22 instead of frame 27. This means that Anila is actually more likely to punish the opponent's fuzzy mash tech with this option instead of just always getting it blocked. Of course, it can still happen. But of course, depending on the timing and things like that, this move is just a lot more attractive to go for now because of that change. The damage has also been increased, doing 1,100 with each hit. So instead of doing 1,800 damage in total, she now does 2,200 damage, making it a lot better as a starter and as a combo tool. The patch notes also say that against mid-air opponents, the ground bounce has been improved. You were able to get a close heavy before off of this move, so I imagine it's just a little more consistent to do so. It should make the move a little more attractive in terms of her combo routing as well as in her anti-air stuff. The final change is one I'll have a little difficulty showing off here, but Fury of the Ram's vertical hitbox in the first 2 frames have been expanded upward, meaning that it should be easier for Anila to get the full cinematic hit and thus the full super's damage when she's close to the opponent. This name is going to be applying in her combo routing when the opponent's in a juggle state. To better contextualize some of these buffs altogether, we have Monocat here highlighting that Anila has some looping routes now thanks to the ramification changes. And as they demonstrate, it leads to a safe jump. So this is pretty nice because Anila now basically isn't so combo reliant on her cooldowns. She now just has a guaranteed way of making sure that she's able to buy time for her cooldowns to come back. She gets a hit on you in the corner, she's going to be able to do the same combo over and over again. And that's a pretty good change for her. And another way to sort of demonstrate these changes is the fact that because of these combo stability improvements, Anila is now able to two-touch you if she gets the right starters. Safe jump, bait the DP, a second heavy starter. And you know, you look and you see, and you've built the full bar for this combo. And I believe that because of the buff to Super Skybound art here, you actually get the full cinematic in that particular juggle now. Maybe you did before. I'm just speculating here, but there you go. Nice little highlight of Anila changes. While I do think Anila was one of the weaker characters in the game, I don't think that she was like one of the worst off in there. I mean, we've seen high-level players like Ryazo do incredible things with the character, both in terms of just ranked performance as well as in some bracket runs here and there, just by their own talent. But, you know, it's kind of nice to see Anila get some nice, good buffs across her kit, improving her damage, improving some of the utility of her less used tools, and improving her neutral a little bit. So she definitely like could have used a few like buffs, I suppose, but she definitely wasn't needing them like some other characters were, like Vikala, for example. But still, Anila got them, and I know Anila players should be pretty happy about that. That concludes it for the video. I appreciate all of you for watching. I'm going to go start working on the Dragon Ball Fighters new patch videos now. Thanks again.